Groomer, groomer, groomer. It's a word you're hearing everywhere right now, and it's got sticking power. Just like racist, sexist, and fascist before it, groomer is a thought-terminating insult. You don't need to address the validity of your opponent's argument. You don't need to view things from their point of view. You don't need to reason it out. Just slap a label on them. But unlike racist, sexist, and fascist, which were all used in this way by the left, groomer is coming out of the right. Where the left once dismissed people out of hand without listening to their positions, or engaging the rational part of their brain at all by calling them a racist, a sexist, or a fascist, now the right can do the exact same by calling them a groomer. It's as I said in my concept creep video. I don't like this state of affairs, but I understand it. The left has made the last decade of political discourse all about slandering people rather than considering ideas. And the right, being the lumbering, sleepy giant that it is, finally figured out that that was the game being played, and now they're playing it. More specifically, the word groomer right now is being used to describe the LGBTQ plus alphabet soup activists, who believe that they have a moral obligation to teach their LGBTQ plus alphabet soup ideology to children. They believe this is a harm prevention tactic, because gay or trans youth who grow up without the knowledge of gayness or transness, or even worse, who grow up in households or environments that are actively hostile to gay or trans people, turn out to have a much harder time as adults with accepting who they really are and living a functional life as a gay or trans person. People who oppose the alphabet soup ideology believe that gay or trans adults were groomed into being gay or trans as young children, historically by other gay or trans people, but nowadays the suspicion extends to anybody pushing the political agenda, even if they themselves are straight. They believe that these abusers now occupy low-level positions of power in the school system as teachers and local administrators, that they use this power to groom children behind the backs of parents, and that the current wave of don't say gay legislation that started in Florida is necessary to stop the groomers from corrupting the youth of today. This video is going to serve as a list of what appears to be, at least to me, legitimate evidence of possible grooming. This list is not exhaustive, because as always, there can be events that I missed or stuff that happens in the future. What this list will not contain are situations where teachers casually talk about their romantic life in an age-appropriate way, where they just so happen to be gay. Like it or not, I don't consider those events to be grooming. If a teacher has a picture of his same-sex partner on his desk from their wedding day, and a student asks him about it, that's not grooming. And if you think it is, you're huffing copium. I'm also not going to be including instances of age-appropriate sex ed on the list either. A biology class where reproduction is taught or something like that, that's not grooming. And I think people who genuinely believe that abstinence-only education is the way to go are fucking delusional. Did you forget what it's like to be a horny teenager? There are also borderline events that aren't worth putting on this list, but are still worth discussing. The teacher who comes out to her class, while not being explicit, is needlessly drawing attention to her personal life. This isn't the same thing as a student overhearing a casual conversation, or seeing a same-sex wedding photo on a desk. That is accidental or incidental. This is deliberately drawing attention to your private life for no reason. But I would argue that it's still not grooming, because it's not explicit. It's weird, it's inappropriate, it shouldn't be happening, but I think for these cases, grooming is too strong of a word. Also, I'll do my best not to retread old ground. I know, for example, my Taylor Lorenz video included the family sex show, or that one woman who ran a sex ed summer camp in the Appalachians, where she talked about how she encouraged her toddler-aged nephews to masturbate. We won't be going over that stuff again in this video. You're free to go back and check that out if you like. The reason I'm defining my parameters this strictly is because I want this to be a list that people can trust, that you can't really crack open by prying at the edges with exceptions. What you are about to see constitutes, to me, reasonable evidence of legitimate grooming of children by people in positions of power. Okay, here we go. A child advocacy group defined grooming in 2019 as the preparation phase of child sexual assault and exploitation, undertaken by the perpetrator to gain the trust of the child or young person, and to establish secrecy and silence. Grooming may cause a child to feel as if they have an important and special relationship with the person who is harming them, experience confusion over the nature of their relationship, internalize abuse as their fault, feeling responsibility for any harm experienced, and fearing they will be blamed, punished, or not believed. Fear that they will be separated from their family or home if they speak out. Believe that disclosure will cause harm to someone or something they love and care for, such as family members or pets. Grooming includes a range of behaviors and/or verbal or written communications with the child or young person. The intention of this communication is to make sexual contact with the child or young person while maintaining the child or young person's silence. Grooming may take a number of forms: building trust, favoritism, gaining the trust of the child's carers, isolation, intimidation and secrecy, testing the waters and boundary violation, shaping the child's perceptions. I want you to keep this extensive definition in mind as we work through these examples. In Australia, one 10-year-old girl was given a homework assignment where she was to discuss with her father his erection and report back. The incident was discussed in their parliament.
I wish to raise a matter this afternoon for the attention of the Minister for Education, and I have to say it is not often in this job. I am absolutely shocked. I thought I'd seen everything, but this one is just beyond words. It is a note from a constituent who says, "Hi Bernie, this is a worksheet that my 10-year-old daughter brought home from school," and it includes a photo of the worksheet. Part of her homework was to discuss with her father his erections and ejaculation. I find this very disturbing and sickening, as indeed do I have to say. I have complained to the school and was told it was just part of the curriculum. Can you advise who else I should make a complaint to? Well, I could go on for days who she could complain to. My daughter still plays with dolls and writes letters to the Tooth Fairy. There is no way any little girl should be told to ask these questions. Well, so say all of us. What the hell is going on in this state when 10-year-old girls are told to go home and talk to your father about his erections and about his ejaculations? What the hell is going on here? How the hell are we supposed to protect our kids when this sort of perversion is in our schools? This is what is being dished up to them on a daily basis. In a primary school. Not even a secondary school, a primary school.
In Austin, worksheets were given to second graders teaching them about the furry subculture, how to design your own fursona, and a furry word search including Star Fox, Digimon, Muskie, Jesus Christ. Okay, this one's really weird. This one's really fucking weird. I'm reminded of that old meme from 15 years ago or whatever. There were furry parents who were homeschooling their kids with furry worksheets. Jesus. Students in a Camp Olinda high school were instructed to tell the school how comfortable they were with various sex acts, including anal sex, and then instructed not to tell their parents about the request. 4-year-olds in a kindergarten class at a British Columbia school were given a masturbation worksheet, where the child was told to describe locations in which they could safely masturbate in privacy. This is a high school assignment given to a 15-year-old girl in a Las Vegas school in Nevada.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to read you an assignment given to my 15-year-old daughter at a local high school. This will be horrifying for me to read to you, but that will give you perspective on how she must have felt when her teacher required her to memorize this and to act it out in front of her entire class. I don't love you. It's not you. It's just, I don't like your dick, or any dick in that case. I cheated, Joe.
I'm sorry.
This is propaganda. That
Forgive
they're
me.
gonna put
Excuse me. I don't. Thank you so much for your. Thank you for your comment. Forgive me. We're not using profanity. Are you?
Okay.
We
What?
have the time back. That's relevant. I should talk.
Okay.
Yes. The teacher
This.
required my daughter to memorize this and read this pornographic material.
Excuse me. Please don't engage with the audience.
Okay. Sorry, it's my
please
first time
continue your
here.
public comment. Your time is. You've got 1 minute and 19 seconds. I ask you simply. This is a public meeting. I ask for decorum, and I'm asking. Dr. Jara. Thank you so much, Dr. Jara.
If you don't want me to read it to you, what was that like for my 15-year-old daughter to have to memorize pornographic material and memorize it and portray?
Madam President, members of the board staffs on this, we can have the region superintendent speak.
Yes, even though it's considered acceptable to give to a student, it's also too inappropriate to have on public record at the local county meeting. Oh, also, those official fact checkers are here to tell us that she wasn't actually silenced. That was all debunked. It never happened.
It's false. No way. Not this time. We created it. It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up.
This book is from a middle school library in Loudon. The book is called Seeing Gender by Iris Gottlieb and contains a lengthy segment about the positives of engaging in prostitution. This book is from an elementary school in Salt Lake City. The book is called My Body is Growing by Dagmar Glacier and is recommended for ages 4 to 8. The book contains this passage. Sabrina's vagina becomes moist and warm, and Marco's penis gets very stiff. Marco then pushes his penis into Sabrina's vagina, always in and out. That feels great for both of them. When the feeling is nicest, Marco's penis sprays semen into Sabrina's vagina. Jesus. I just cannot with the freak out over genderqueer. It's listed for readers 15 years old and up and contains way less pornographic content than a PG-13 movie. The comic in question contains a graphic depiction of a blowjob, and yes, it can be found in some schools. Another book found at middle schools right now is Let's Talk About It, which teaches students how to prep themselves for anal, or encourages them to find fetish subcommunities online. You know, I remember being like 15 and finding some fucked up shit on 4chan, yeah, but it was a lot more magical discovering it by myself, rather than being led by some adult with a political agenda. Many schools are starting what's known as transition closets, where the student can arrive as one gender, go into the transition closet, put on a new set of gender-affirming clothing, spend the day as the other gender, and then switch back at the end of the day, hiding their transition from their parents. Other schools have gender expression kits for much the same effect. These schools often have written procedures demanding that teachers keep this stuff from the parents, and these same procedures also codify that only self-identification, and not presentation or transition, be required to allow the use of change rooms and bathrooms of choice. At a high school in Oregon, trans-inclusive bathroom policy relying solely on self-identification has led to male students walking into female bathrooms solely to creep on their occupants, with the permission of the school staff, with one student describing her experience, which the school has since dismissed.
Have you seen children misusing this policy?
Yes. I've watched guys just walk into the girls' bathrooms while I'm in there, pretty much just walks in, looks at us, and then either uses the bathroom or stands there for a minute and just walks right back out.
A similar event happened in an elementary school to an 8-year-old girl.
I am here today to share my daughter's story, who is in elementary school. She came home from school and told me about a situation that had happened. How her and a friend went to use the restroom, except at this time there was a boy in there who was dressed like a girl. She said they were very uncomfortable and she didn't know what to do. She said they waited in the hallway until he was finished. As any concerned parent, I called the principal to find out what was happening. I was told under the law referencing Title IX Education Amendment Act of 1972, students may choose to use whichever restroom, changing, locker room, or shower they identify with. She went to the restroom and ran into this boy. She held it because, Mom, I didn't feel comfortable using the restroom in front of a boy. I held it all day long. My daughter spoke up, voicing their feelings, as have many other girls at this school. Please hear their voices, and my voice as a concerned parent. My daughters and all the little girls at this elementary school, quite frankly, were blindsided and forcibly put into a very awkward situation with no warning whatsoever. Shame on the leaders of this district for not preparing or preventing this complete violation of modesty, privacy, and intimidation factor that these girls felt and continue to feel. My rights as a parent were taken away when I had to explain to my 8 and 10-year-old daughters why a boy with boy parts is in the girls' bathroom dressed like a girl. I was forced to have a very hyper-sexual conversation that I didn't, and I still don't, feel was age appropriate for my girls.
Many schools with these policies have hung up signs like this, telling students not to stare, challenge, or insult people who appear to be using the wrong restroom, because it's not your place to judge. Here is a teacher of 4th graders who openly states that the reason that her students are queer is because she is queer. She's quite proud of the fact that she's a part of what is likely not coming out for most of them, but rather emulation of the cool young teacher, which is common at that age.
My kids from last year are now in 5th grade and they come visit me almost every day after school. And a lot of them are queer because I am queer. And they figured it out. And so I've become their safe space.
An elementary school in Minnesota has a Pride Day every single Wednesday. Jesus, you think that would get old quick? I could barely stand going to church on Sundays when I was growing up. I just wanted to play video games. I sent my 12-year-old son to school in a dress to combat gender stereotypes. And now he doesn't want to go to school anymore. What should I do? I don't know, Minecraft yourself? A school counselor at Tuscan High School organized a drag show, which ended up becoming an outlet for her to start a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old student. This one is pretty reminiscent of the child sex offenders pouring out of Drag Queen Story Hour. Do you remember that one trans professor from the Taylor Lorenz video who defended pedophiles as minor attracted persons?
I use the term minor attracted person or MAP in the title and throughout the book for multiple reasons. First of all, because I think it's important to use terminology for groups that members of that group want others to use for them. And MAP advocacy groups like Before You Act have advocated for use of the term MAP. They've advocated for it primarily because it's less stigmatizing than other terms like pedophile. A lot of people, when they hear the term pedophile, they automatically assume that it means a sex offender. and that isn't true, and it leads to a lot of misconceptions about attractions toward minors. I've definitely heard the idea that you brought up, though, that the use of the term minor attracted person suggests that it's okay to be attracted to children. But using a term that communicates who someone is attracted to doesn't indicate anything about the morality of that attraction.
She had to resign from her Virginia school due to that video going viral, but she got a new job. Now she works at the Johns Hopkins Sex Abuse Center. Ankeny High School brought in drag queens to perform sexual dances for school students. The presentation was meant to be about gender identity and expression. The Maine Department of Education has videos meant to be played to kindergartners, not simply describing what the terms lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender mean, but also encourages kids to engage in political activism surrounding these topics. The School District of Philadelphia has encouraged teachers to attend conferences on kink, BDSM, trans sex, big dick energy, and banging beyond binaries. These conferences are meant to inform teachers about what to teach their students on these topics.
The purpose of this workshop is to showcase different types of prosthetics available for sex. Almost every single one that I will be showing you, all of them actually, look like penises. I have tried and touched many dicks, all right? Prosthetics, real dicks, all dicks. This is one of the most realistic feeling in terms of like the inside of a penis, all right? And now a pack and play is going to be a prosthetic that you can use for sex, but you can also pack with it when you're not having sex. You're just walking around, it's your everyday packer that you just wear in your pants, and then when you're ready to get in the mood, you're boy-yo-yo-yoing, and you can go and have sex. But here, that it's a big boy. This is like gigantic, all right? Give me 2 hours alone and I'll get this in my butt, you know? Like, it's just, but let me tell you, I know it's not for sale and I'm not reviewing it, but it's really soft. Like, it has a hard core, and then the outside is just like memory foam. It just feels really good. I do like the fuse, like for anal sex, this is really, really great. If this person is more used to having sex with, I mean, my choice will always be the joystick.
This is a very long Substack post called The Saga of Sage. I will link it in the description of the video. We don't have time to go over all of it because I'm shotgunning examples here. The TLDR of it is, Sage is a 15-year-old girl, adopted by her grandparents. Sage decided that she was trans and wanted to become a boy named Draco. The school obliged because under Virginia law, the guardian's permission isn't needed, and informing the guardian also isn't needed. Eventually, Sage ran away from home. It was discovered during the investigation that she had been manipulated into a lot of weird sexual stuff on Discord, part of it being the transitioning, and that the culmination of those efforts led her to willingly meet up with a sex trafficker who moved her from Virginia to DC to Maryland, where she was repeatedly sexually abused. The state refused to help the grandparents because they rejected her Draco identity, calling their actions transphobic and abusive. Sage was placed in an all-boys home for kids without guardians, where she was repeatedly sexually abused again. She eventually ran away from that home, back into the arms of the traffickers, where she eventually resurfaced in Texas, having been turned into a drugged-out prostitute. And just in case you're wondering how Discord actually plays into it, here is a somewhat well-known DIY HRT Discord. LOL, I've been pressing Xanax with estrogen and selling it to high schoolers. We need more kids on the server. 12 years old is a prime age for HRT. Medically true. Corrupting kids is fun too. They don't know any better. If you want to know why people don't trust that Bob posting chick when she brags about how many minors she's got onto illicit HRT, it's probably because of the attitudes of these people and the horror stories coming out of these Discords. A Bellingham School District Board director set up an all-ages queer youth open mic event for the students in her district, held at a sex shop that she owns. The sex shop sells the usual toys and gear, but keep in mind, it's an all-ages event. This school has a rainbow club, where no permission from the parents is required to attend, and the club is kept a secret by people who are not in the club.
Piggybacking on what Kieran said, on our first meeting, we had a conversation about what the expectations are within our club, and confidentiality was brought up. And so we had this clause where anybody who comes to Rainbow Club, it's not like a secret, but it's just something that we keep within the club itself.
Listen, the first rule, you do not talk about Rainbow Club. The second rule, you do not talk about Rainbow Club. Fury, as Colorado teacher, invites a schoolgirl, 12 years old, to after-school arts club that was actually a meeting about trans and queer identity. Kids were asked who they were sexually attracted to and told that it's okay to lie to their parents. Aaron Lee, whose child was at Wellington Middle School in Colorado up until this year, slammed Jenna Riep for getting the youngster to go to the Gender and Sexualities Alliance event. She told how her daughter came home and revealed that a speaker told them that they may be transgender if they were not comfortable with their bodies. The mother claimed they also asked the kids who they were sexually attracted to, and informed them that they could be queer while showing them a genderbread person. Lee also alleged the youngsters were even asked to keep details of the meeting a secret, and warned that their parents were not safe. The lesson, which district officials have since defended, spurred the concerned mother to pull her child out of the public school. A school district in Texas was discovered to be purposely hiding information from parents regarding their children, insofar as LGBT stuff is concerned. The district has said that this is not happening, but it turns out, as per staff working there, they were lying.
As a district counselor, I want to speak to the agenda item that's addressing the duties and responsibilities of employees. In January, an article went public regarding a teacher training that instructed teachers and staff to not out students to their parents. Round Rock ISD responded to parent concerns by saying, and I quote, "Our district's practice is to include parents in their child's education. This slide is not a district-prepared training," end quotes. Well, it was not a district-prepared training, and we do strive to include parents in their child's education. We actually were advised to not tell parents about their child's preferred names and pronouns.
The craziest example that I have is how an equality club at the Buena Vista Middle School in California was a cover for overt grooming. 2 teachers were recorded coaching other teachers to conceal the nature of the club from parents. One high-profile parent, Jessica Conan, had her daughter approached by one of the teachers while she was alone, convinced to join the club, and then began being affirmed as transgender by the adults of the club. Eventually, the school decided it was time to tell Conan about her daughter's transition, and when Conan had questions or asked for time to process the news about one of her kids being trans, she was treated harshly and accused of not being emotionally supportive. Shortly thereafter, the school had reported Conan to Child Protective Services. CPS investigated and found no problems. Conan's daughter began feeling suicidal during her time in the club, a fact that the school completely hid from her family. After switching schools, Conan's daughter, now 14 years old and in much better mental health, would go on to describe the grooming process, stating that the people in the Equality Club weren't good people. Conan asked her daughter if she wanted to keep using the male identity that had been foisted on her, and now that she's out of that environment, she didn't. Eventually, the school board had a hearing where parents had the opportunity to tell their own stories, and Conan, as well as many other parents, showed up to describe what's been going on at the Equality Club. Here is Jessica Conan speaking at that hearing.
Let these teachers come in and act as if they have nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. A mistake? How long of a mistake? How many mistakes are we going to take before my child almost lost her life? They didn't tell me that my child was suicidal. You allowed these teachers to open their classrooms teaching predatory information to a young child, a mindful child that doesn't even know how to comprehend it all. How do you not know what was going on your own campuses? Did you think that no parent would ever come forward? You will not quiet me today. I will stand here today and protect my child along with every other child who has not come forward yet. Do they have psychiatry degrees that I was unaware of? Because I didn't hire them. Okay, I did not hire them to sit there and nitpick my child's brain. You took away my ability to parent my child, even before I had any knowledge. I didn't even get to show support. You asked for support, I didn't get a chance. You planted seeds, Miss Caldera and Miss Baraki. You changed her personal documentation, her gender, her name, her email. I authorized an AKA added to her attendance because I wanted to be supportive. But guess what? She's allergic to bees. Her medical record says a birth name, and you changed it. Who administers that now? Not everything, not me. You guys did this on your own accountability, and you've gone too far. They downgraded me in front of my child and allowed me to question myself as a mother. You sat there and told me how my child was going to be. And then you wrapped your hands around her while I sat across the table and cried. Because you thought you could be there better than I, and I never got a chance. She was scared to even say anything. Your guys' voice were heard, not hers.
Here is another parent speaking who had a child go through the Equalities Club. His job is actually related to recognizing the signs of sexual grooming in children, and he saw those signs here.
These were teachers that we knew and supported in the classroom, and their actions have gone too far. They've used predatory tactics to push political activism on our school grounds to our children. They train us exactly what to look for. You look for people that use their power of position or authority, which teachers in a school environment are in a power of position and authority. They single kids out. They look for kids that don't fit or different or need attention. They did internet searches They listened to conversations, and they looked for kids that were different. And they exploited them. They gave kids extra attention. They gave personal invitations to their club. That was the extra attention they needed. They allowed kids to do things maybe that their parents weren't particularly supportive of. Lastly, they withheld information from parents, and they created a system that didn't allow parents to check in on things.
The leaked audio that revealed all of this stuff was recorded at the California Teachers Association conference during October of 2021. A meeting at that conference centered around how to best implement LGBT-positive curriculums and clubs in conservative communities, specifically devising tactics to subvert parents. The teachers speaking at that conference used their authority to spy on what students were searching on Google while on campus. If it was related to gay or trans stuff, they would add the children to a list to be approached at an opportune time later. They would read the private messages sent between kids to farm for similar info. They would also observe kids in their classes. If they expressed an interest, or if they were kind of alone or distraught, they would be invited into the Equalities Club. The club itself contained a lot of love bombing, affirmations that the kids were chosen and special, and the gradual acclamation toward the idea that the kids were trans, and were required to take on a new name and identity, separate from any sort of psychological evaluation, and were encouraged to transition behind the backs of parents, something that California teachers all across the state have been flirting with for a while now. The existence of clubs like the Equalities Club is a secret, a sentiment echoed by other examples earlier in the video. Here is the partial transcript of the leaked audio of two of the accused teachers, Lori Caldera and Kelly Baraki, at that conference where other teachers in California were learning techniques for how to set up these clubs. We are not official, we have no roster, we keep no records. We don't want to keep records, because if parents get upset their kids are coming, we're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe they came. We would never want a kid to get in trouble for attending if their parents are upset. We have LGBTQ kids who come to us, and they come and spend a year with us, and they get all the love and affirmation that they need, and we give them the tools to be powerful and brave and bold. Then they go hang with their friends at lunch and they do their own thing, and we love them for that, but we miss them when they don't join us. So we saw our membership numbers start to decline. So we started to try and identify kids. When we were doing our virtual learning, we totally stalked what they were doing on Google when they weren't doing schoolwork. One of them was Googling Trans Day of Visibility, and we're like, check. We're going to invite that kid when we get back on campus. Whenever they follow the Google Doodle links or whatever, right, we make note of those kids and the things that they bring up with each other in chats or in email or whatever. Beyond electronic surveillance, we use our observations of kids in the classroom, conversations that we hear, to personally invite students, because that's really the way that we get bodies in the door. They need that invitation. Next year, we're going to do just a little mind trick on our 6th graders. They were the last to go through this presentation, and the gender stuff was the last thing we talked about. So next year, they'll be going first with the presentation, and the gender stuff will be the first thing they're talked about, hopefully to mitigate negative responses from parents. Baraki mocked parents who felt like they were being forced into having conversations with children about sex that were too young. I know, it's so sad, right? Sorry for you, you had to do something hard. Honestly, your 12-year-old probably knew all that already, right? Caldera would go on to say, I have tenure. You can't fire me for running the club. You can be mad, but you can't fire me for it. We've also acted with great integrity during the past several years that we've run the club. We never crossed a line. We wanted to, but we never have. And what happens in this room stays in this room. Remember that textbook definition of what grooming actually is? Well, this Equalities Club certainly fits it. They stalk and spy on kids to identify potential targets. Children who are lonely, vulnerable, and questioning. They make them feel special. They invite them to their secret club that is very important to keep private about. They love bomb the kids, push their agenda onto them, groom them into discovering their true identity about themselves, and then coach them into believing that their parents will hate them if they ever discover the truth about their true self. And the only one who can save them is them. As for why, if it's sexual gratification, the leaked audio doesn't show it. It seems to be only political, in this case, where Caldera says, always remember that youth are the drivers of change. These kids are their political projects. This whole groomer as a slur thing coming from the right has become so effective that activists on the left are trying to just embrace it as a way to slow it down. The activist group Where True Love Is, before scrubbing the internet of their use of the word due to blowback, tried to do a counter-agitprop campaign where they just say, yes, of course we're groomers. Grooming is good, guys.
I kind of want to take this term groomer back and grooming back and start a movement, a wave of people saying, yes, I am a groomer. Because everybody grooms children. Anybody who has kids in their lives hopes to be grooming them in some way, informing them, whether they're intentionally teaching or whether it's just through their role modeling and behaviors.
I think the idea of taking it back and talking about grooming as something you do to shape someone in a good way is something that we should take back, because that is what we do. We set a good example for children, not a bad example. And all of this malarkey is ridiculous, and we need to just take it back and say who we are and be seen in the world for who we are. Are we groomers?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll be a groomer as much as possible. We're going to groom.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that choir of LGBT activists who sang a few years ago about coming for your children.
We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children.
Yeah, that one. And how a big fat chunk of them turned out to actually be convicted child molesters. That whole "it's not happening and it's good that it's happening" line is ramping up to 11. And not just with demographic replacement, but with the whole grooming of children thing too. So when somebody says the end game of trans rights is just to be left alone, I find it hard to believe. That is a good end game. Trans adults should be left in their privacy to do whatever they want with other adults. That's nobody's business. But I don't believe any activist who says that's what they want. That is too reasonable a request for any activist to pursue. Now, let me try and steel man the other side as much as possible. There are absolutely instances in which a teenager is legitimately gay or trans, not groomed, and they have to hide that from their disapproving parents who might beat them or kick them out or kill them if they come out. The best case for those kids is to remain closeted until they go off to university, and that kind of sucks. I can understand why teachers in that case have a moral obligation not to tell the parents, which is why that much vilified Florida Don't Say Gay bill included a clause for just that situation in it. The problem is, a lot of what I've shown you today is taking that reasonable exemption, and rather than respecting it for what it is, using it as a wedge to open the door as wide as possible for political reasons. The actual kids themselves be damned. And all of this being said, let's not pretend that the right is somehow innocent of this stuff too. Do you remember what it was like before the left won the culture war? Probably not, you're likely a Zoomer. But I do. The Deep South and other red areas of the United States were host to all sorts of weird shit about kids back in the 90s. Child pageants, child brides and various laws protecting them, priests molesting kids and it being covered up. The Southern Baptist Convention has a lot of sway in Republican politics, and they have spent decades covering up child abuse in their midst. Only a few days ago were they finally strong-armed into releasing a heavily redacted list of abusers that they've sheltered. And then there's also just the general tit-for-tat shit. If a pride flag has no place in a classroom, then neither does a thin blue line flag. They're both political symbols. If you want to complain about babies being put into trans jumpers or kids wearing LGBT shirts, fair enough. But the whole jokingly sexualizing children with captions on clothing thing has been happening for decades. Am I the only one who thinks it's creepy when a 1-year-old has a shirt that says pussy magnet on it or something? And then there's the stuff that I'm sure we've all heard before. Is it grooming if a kid is raised in a gun culture or an anti-state culture by their parents? I mean, maybe, maybe not. Depends on if the kid's actually interested and if it's age appropriate. Well, okay. Is it grooming when kids are posing with strippers holding a fuck Biden flag? Is it grooming when racist Southern skinheads bring their kids to neo-Nazi marches or Confederate events? The right wing is not innocent of this. And even nowadays, where they can get away with this type of sick shit, they do it. There's a reason that a parent who complained about LGBT literature in schools ended up raping a child. The difference is, though, is that the right is not culturally ascendant at the moment. It's LGBT content in the media right now, not weird Christian youth fertility stuff anymore. That died with John and Kate +8. The people who are sex pests in schools right now aren't the old white men who believe that God has commanded them to take their 5th nubile daughter wife. It's LGBT activists who believe that by grooming children into being LGBT, they're perpetuating their culture and politics into the next generation. In other words, the right lacks opportunity. If they had penetrated as deeply into our institutions as the left has right now, I have a feeling they would be doing something similar. But they haven't. In reality, in the here and now, it is the left doing this. Now there's also the spotlighting effect to consider. An account like Libs of TikTok routinely highlights the worst possible cases in order to get clicks, and then makes viewers believe that these worst cases are the average situation in any random school right now, rather than a fringe minority of terrible events. That is a problem. I'm inclined to believe that in reality, this stuff is probably less likely to happen than we think. But that realization doesn't help Sage, who was groomed into a prostitute, drugged and raped and sex trafficked across the country. It doesn't help Conan's daughter, who was groomed into believing that she was trans and if she didn't listen to the teachers, she'd be taken from her parents. Telling these people, oh, don't worry, your situation is abnormal. It doesn't happen that often. That doesn't change anything. This shit still needs to stop. The issue ultimately is the use of that good faith exemption to shield legitimately gay and trans kids from abuse at home and how it's being abused by bad faith actors. And if, as a result of all this grooming and then the pushback against it, that the good faith exemption goes, that's going to cause a lot of real harm to those closeted kids, if teachers are forced to out them to abusive parents. But if the school is going to have this kind of power, it has to be used responsibly, and any school official who is discovered to have wielded it inappropriately for political or sexual gain needs to be permanently removed from the school system. If a doctor told us that we had cancer, we would be distraught, but at least kinda thankful that we now know. To contrast, we would be quite angry at the incompetent doctor who gave us a false diagnosis of cancer. And we would be absolutely livid with a doctor who knowingly falsely diagnosed us with cancer and then tried to convince us that we had it and then had us go through treatment for it, all for their own gain. We would want their jobs in their fucking heads, and everybody would agree that it would be grossly immoral to do. We should be treating gender dysphoria in the exact same way. Kids who legitimately have it should be protected, but those are a very small minority of kids. And this whole pushing it onto kids who don't have it shit needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.